Hi and welcome to section 2 of Introduction to the Economy of Saudi Arabia and the other GCC countries. My name is Eric William Wellstrom. For you, those of you who are following us from section 1, I apologize. I said oil and gas would be section 3. That it is not, it is section 2. For those of you who are starting with this section, I would of course always encourage you to listen to them chronologically and listen to all of them. But I will strongly recommend that you listen to section 0 first, regardless of which other one you want to begin with, because there I will outline the purpose, I'll give a disclaimer, and basically walk you through what will be included in the different sections. Anyhow, let's get started with section 2, oil and gas. First off, oil. Saudi Arabia's oil production capacity is reported to be 12.5 million barrels per day. This figure is somewhat disputed. Oil production in 2010 was 8.4 million barrels per day. It's been higher now in 2011 due to the Arab Spring. Saudi Arabia was the country who stepped in to supply oil when Libya, of course, was in the middle of a civil war, basically. So that's why you have 9.11. It's been around this level now for a few years. Basically, you can see right away there's a big difference between the reported oil producing capacity and the actual oil production. Therefore, Saudi Arabia is often referred to as a swing producer, basically the world's only swing producer, as in they're the only ones to have the excess capacity to step in if a shock hits the world's oil market. What might surprise people is that Saudi Arabia is no longer the world's biggest oil producer. If you look at the table or figure in the bottom left, we see the world's 10 largest oil producer. Russia is today the largest oil producer. Reserves in Saudi Arabia are 267 billion barrels. Also they're not number one anymore, they're number two. Therefore, I'll refer to the figure on the right hand side. Oil reserve figures for Saudi Arabia and Venezuela. Just looking at the figure is a little bit strange. You have Saudi Arabia's oil reserves have been basically completely flat. And then you have Venezuela's, which has skyrocketed the last couple of years. I am not going to go into discuss details of Venezuela's oil reserves because this is not something I know much about. All I would point out is that every individual OPEC country hands in their own numbers. There's nobody who comes and checks them. There's no audit of this. And also, reserves is what is used as a basis when they hand out production quotas. Saudi Arabia's oil is, of course, of a completely different quality than Venezuela's. I personally would say that they are the most important oil producer. Saudi Arabia, I'm talking about now. Despite not being the biggest producer, not having the biggest reserves, they are the biggest exporter, and as I said, the world's only major swing producer. China was the biggest purchaser of Saudi oil so far in 2011, and I also believe it was in 2010. Currently, the break-even price for oil in Saudi Arabia is 85 US dollars. The 85. When I'm talking about break-even, I'm talking about where the government budgets for break-even, because the revenue of the government is 75% from oil, and oil consists of 90% of exports. The break-even price has increased quite a bit recently and will continue to increase unless something dramatically is done to shift the country's trajectory when it comes to domestic energy use. This will be discussed in detail in section 5 called Energy Consumption and Production. It's called Domestic Energy Consumption and Production. Since Saudi Arabia is the only swing producer, they have traditionally the biggest influence on the oil price in the world. Exactly what Saudi Arabia calls the correct price of oil, we don't really know. It's been increasing. Of course, it might increase because the break-even price has increased. Not that long ago, Saudi Arabia was saying $60, $70. Now they're talking maybe $90. We don't know. They don't have an official target, or changes a little bit. What is, however, clear is that Saudi is among the OPEC countries who want to restrain the rise in oil prices. Saudi Arabia is an oil producer which was in it for the long haul. But that I mean they want to keep on selling oil for many years to come. They know, they'll learn from previous experience. If the oil price skyrockets, it will, of course, it will be a huge incentive for research and development in alternative energy fuels, and it might even tilt the world into a recession, especially in the oil-hungry countries like America. This is debatable among economists, but what is not debatable is that when the first oil shocks hit the world in the 70s, basically overnight, General Motor halved the size of the engine in all their cars, and ever since, oil consumption as a percent of GDP has been falling. Right, and also, of course, there is the danger of a rate rise in other countries' production. Unconventional oil and gas, especially gas, so far has been a game changer. Talking about shale gas in America, potentially shale gas in Europe, tar sands in Canada. Yeah, the world of oil has changed quite a bit the last couple of years. Now, whereas the West used to be the sole large purchaser of oil, of course Japan has been there for many years, but now we're seeing other countries like, for instance, China. Like I said, China is the biggest purchaser of Saudi oil, not America, which it used to be. Moving on to oil production in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabian oil production is dominated by Saudi Aramco. Saudi Aramco was originally an American company, Arabian American Oil Company. That's what the name Aramco comes from. Over the years, like I said, it was basically American, set up by as a joint venture of all the big American oil companies at the time. Over the years, it was gradually nationalized. It was not nationalized as in there was no revolution or any. What we consider when we listen to the word nationalization, it basically means taken by force. It was bought by the Saudis. Even after it was bought by the Saudis, for some years the Americans had special privileges. They could buy oil at a discounted price. All those things are now gone. Saudi Aramco is separate from America and is a complete Saudi-owned entity, government-owned entity, that is. Despite being owned from the government or by the government, it is actually quite a good company, or the way it's run. It's run quite independently, as in, of course, the grand strategy is set by the government. But the day-to-day business is basically done by the company itself. Not all national oil companies are run in such a fashion. In many places or many regimes through history, we've had countries where governments have used the national oil company as a piggy bank. Of course, maybe they'll be out of power in a few years. They basically drained it for investments, for short-term benefits. Some people claim Mexico's Pemex has suffered from this. The main problem, the way I see it with Aramco, is that it's not public, little information is available and hard to verify. When they say they have 12.5 million barrels per day capacity, how do we know they don't, or who's going to tell us if this is right or wrong? Personally, I believe that figure is correct, but I'm talking about information in general. Why do I believe that figure is correct? I'll try to explain that. For years, exploration dominated Aramco's exploration and bringing new oil fields into production. In 2007, they started a large capacity increasing project, which added in excess of 4 million barrels per day production capacity. If you see the top table on the figure, these are the oil fields which have come online since 2004. As you see, if you add all these together, you'll roughly end up with 4. The only one, or the capacity that is, and the one who's waiting is the bottom one, Manifa. It will be completed, or estimated it will be completed in 2013 or 2014. Yes, and as we can see, many of these fields, they started their program in 2004. Many of them came online in the last couple of years. Lots of 2009, 2010 there. An interesting field, Kurais, and I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it completely off in Arabic. I'm not very fluent in Arabic at all. It has a capacity of 1.2 million barrels per day. This came online, the whole field came online in one day, or as in other big fields in the world, has been gradual steps. I might be mistaken, but I've been told that that was the single biggest increase in capacity in the world, or the single leap since it came all online in one day. But since we had so much capacity come online lately, I believe, or Saudi Aramco policy is really they're not too interested in developing new capacity. Why? Oh, they want to be the world's swing producer. So they need a cushion.